Hi, I'm Barry. It would mean a lot to me if you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I promise you, you will not regret it. I have so many quality videos lined up for the near future. I promise you're not going to want to miss it. Without further ado, let's begin. In American football, there are three ways to score. You have touchdowns, field goals, and a safety. Most normal teams win games by scoring a lot of touchdowns. But what if there was one team that was able to go undefeated, not just in the regular season, but all the way through to the Super Bowl and win the whole thing without ever scoring a touchdown all season long? Has it ever been done? This video looks to figure out a question that nobody was really asking, but I'm going to answer it anyway because I'm a class act. Can you have an undefeated Super Bowl winning season without ever scoring a touchdown? The video begins right after this short break.
Before I begin, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Game Time.
Game Time has built a ticket marketplace that makes it faster and easier to get into your favorite events at a moment's notice. Game Time provides the premier marketplace for last-minute tickets to the most popular events in sports, music, and theater in more than 60 cities across the US and Canada, eliminating the need for printing, and built a better way to access the best live experiences right from your phone. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, which means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Another cool feature on Game Time is something called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets.
Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy it, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Game Time is also obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets.
One of my greatest experiences as a sports fan was going to watch an NBA game in person. The hype, the atmosphere, the tension, it builds up with every possession, and it comes across in a much different way than you might see on television. You might also see a celebrity or two courtside, who knows? That's the type of experience that Game Time is able to offer to you. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code BARRY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BARRY, B-A-R-R-Y, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Game number 1, September 5th, 1993. The San Diego Chargers beat the Seattle Seahawks 18-12 despite not scoring a touchdown, throwing a pick six, and giving up a safety. Chargers kicker John Carney kicked 6 field goals, but it was enough because the Chargers defense held the Seattle offense, led by Rick Meyer, draft bust, to just 3 points. Game number 2, September 15th, 2024. The Washington Commanders beat the New Jersey Giants 21-18. This one should be memorable for most of you as it happened just this year when the Washington Commanders kicked 7 field goals while giving up 3 touchdowns to the Giants. Yes, that's right. The team that scored 0 touchdowns and gave up 3 touchdowns won the game because the Giants missed an extra point, their kicker got hurt, and then they failed on 2 two-point conversions while playing a quarterback that's not even on the team anymore. Safe to say that this isn't exactly the most sustainable way to win, but hell, it worked for Washington on this day. Game number 3, September 19th, 1993. Hey, it's the 93 Chargers. Remember them from like 30 seconds ago? Well, they're back again with this 18-17 win over the infamous 93 Houston Oilers. Just like before, the Chargers kicked 6 field goals, scored no touchdowns, and nearly hit the cheerleaders on one of the throws, which is why I included it in here. The Chargers quarterbacks won despite going a combined 15 for 41 with an interception. However, it was canceled out by the Oilers turning the ball over 5 times. And that's right, this is the second time in 3 weeks the Chargers threw a pick six, didn't score any touchdowns, and won the game. This is the last we'll see of them on this list though, and they ended up going just 8-8. However, the next year, 94, they would make the Super Bowl to get their ass kicked by the 49ers. Now that's what I call improvement, kind of. Game number 4, September 25th, 1988. The Indianapolis Colts beat the Dan Marino-led Dolphins 15-13 by kicking 5 field goals while Marino threw for 2 touchdowns. Now, one of the interesting things about this game is when it took place. As you know, it took place in the year 1988. Now, 1988 was before 1994, and that's when the 2-point conversion was added to the NFL. If you look at the game results and the box score, you'll see that the Dolphins fell behind 15-7 before scoring a touchdown late in the game to make it 15-13, but they were unable to tie the game, or at least attempt to tie the game, because there were no 2-point conversions. If this game was played several years later, the Dolphins may have had a chance to tie the game with a 2-point conversion and go into overtime, but because it took place when it did, the Colts were able to win despite throwing for just 110 yards and an interception. Game number 5, October 18th, 2020. The Denver Broncos defeated the post-Brady COVID Patriots 18-12. Overall, this was a boring game in general. The Broncos, as you guessed it, kicked 6 field goals, while there was only 1 touchdown scored in general between the two teams, which is the Cam Newton touchdown run. The Patriots did come back from being down 18-3 in the fourth quarter and had a chance to even win on the final drive, but Cam Newton was unable to do anything, and thus the Broncos held on to win despite a horrific performance from Drew Lock. Is there any other type of performance from Drew Lock? Drew Lock went 10 for 24 for 2 interceptions while being sacked twice. But again, it didn't matter because the Patriots offense was unable to do anything. In fact, their best offense might have been with Julian Edelman trick playing as a quarterback. He was 2 for 2 for 38 yards, including a completion to Cam Newton, but it was all for nothing, and this ended up being the second to last game of Edelman's career. Game number 6, October 8th, 2000. We all know the 2000 Baltimore Ravens for Trent Dilfer leading them to a Super Bowl championship, but did you know that Trent Dilfer was not the quarterback for the entire season? He was famously replacing Tony Banks. Imagine that, being so bad that your team is winning games because of your legendary defense, and you get replaced by Trent Dilfer and you go on to win the Super Bowl. That must have destroyed his confidence. Anyway, the Ravens kicked 5 field goals. The Jaguars only scored 1 touchdown in this 15-10 game, which there aren't many highlights of, ironically. But the big stat that you need to know about is that the Jaguars lost this game because they committed 6 turnovers to the Ravens' 1 turnover, despite the Ravens going 17 of 39 offensively. Turn the ball over, it doesn't really matter what else you do in a lot of other categories, as shown by the Jaguars in this game. Game number 7, October 25th, 1992. The Washington Redskins defeated the Vikings 15-13. The defending Super Bowl champion Redskins, that is, which sounds amazing to everybody nowadays. As you may have guessed by the math, the Redskins kicked 5 field goals, scored no touchdowns, while giving up a touchdown and hanging on barely defensively at the very end to win the game. I don't really have much more to say about this game except that it featured 2 Super Bowl participant quarterbacks, Super Bowl MVP Mark Rippon for the Redskins and 5 interception thrower Rich Gannon in Super Bowl 37 for the Raiders. Game number 8, October 29th, 2000. The Oakland Raiders squeaked out a 15-13 win against the eventual 1-15 San Diego Chargers. Remember Rich Gannon from the last game I did? Yeah, well, this time he was on the winning side. The Raiders jumped out to a 12-0 lead, all on field goals, before Jim Harbaugh, hey, he's a head coach now, threw 2 touchdowns, which gave the Chargers a lead, before the Raiders squeaked out the final points with 13 seconds left to win 15-13. The Raiders would eventually go on to play and host the AFC Championship game this year, where they lost to the Ravens, while the Chargers would select LaDainian Tomlinson and Drew Brees in the 0-1 draft. Game number 9, November 5th, 1989. The Minnesota Vikings defeated the Los Angeles Rams 23-21 in a game that surely featured multiple touchdowns and score changes, right? Well, you're actually wrong, because not only was this game a field goal fest in which the Vikings kicked 7 of them. Remember at the beginning of the video I talked about how there are more than one ways to score points. Well, touchdown, field goals, and safeties. And a safety is what the Vikings had in order to win this game. The Rams scored 3 touchdowns and had a 3-point lead late in the game before the Vikings sent it into overtime, where in overtime they recovered a block punt, or they sent a block punt out of the end zone to win 23-21. That's right, they kicked 7 field goals and a safety in order to win. Not exactly the most sustainable or repeatable performance, but it worked for them on this week. However, the Rams would get the last laugh, kind of, as both of these teams would later get destroyed by the 49ers in the playoffs on the 49ers' way to their 4th championship. Game number 10, November 17th, 2024. From this year, we all remember the Steelers defeating the Ravens 18-16, don't we? With the Steelers, who are making a habit out of winning games, kicking nothing but field goals, kicked 6 field goals on the day, while the Ravens scored 2 touchdowns, and a touchdown with a minute left with Lamar Jackson finding Zay Flowers for the score, but the 2-point conversion was no good, and then the Steelers ended up running the clock out in order to win a game in which a lot of people thought they couldn't win. The key stat once again for this game, the Ravens had 3 turnovers to Pittsburgh's 1. Those turnovers will kill you in the end, just like O.J. Simpson, no offense. Game 11, November 18th, 1996. The Dallas Cowboys defeated the eventual Super Bowl champion Packers 21-6. The Cowboys at this point had won 3 of the last 4 rings, and the Packers hadn't found a way to beat them, as they had lost to the Cowboys 3 straight years in the playoffs. And remember, this was by far the best edition of the Packers that the Favre Packers ever had. But yet they were still no match to one of the worst Cowboys teams during the mid-90s. The Cowboys kicked 7 field goals. Favre did throw a touchdown, but it was meaningless. There were no turnovers by either team in this game, which makes this weird. The Cowboys just simply had the Packers' number in the early to mid-90s, and it makes you wonder if the Packers had to have played the Cowboys in Lambeau Lambeau in the NFC Championship game that year instead of the almost expansion Carolina Panthers, would they have ever won a Super Bowl with Brett Favre? Who knows? Game number 12, we go way back to December 3rd, 1972, early in the Archie Manning era Saints, where they end up losing a game 18-17 to the Joe Namath New York Jets. The Jets kicked 6 field goals in a not-so-field goal-friendly era, while the Saints scored 2 touchdowns, including having an 8-point lead early in the fourth quarter, but the Jets ended up kicking the game-winning field goal as time expired, which gave them an 18-17 win. But don't worry, Archie Manning would make up for it by having sex multiple times, which ended up producing and siring Peyton and Eli Manning, who ended up defeating Tom Brady 5 times in the playoffs. Thank you for that, Archie. Game 13, December 3rd, 2000. The Tennessee Titans, who were fresh off of a Super Bowl appearance in the infamous 1-yard line game against the Rams the year before, came in with a very, very good team and barely squeaked out a 15-13 win. They kicked 5 field goals, including the game-winning field goal with no time left while trailing by 1 point after Donovan McNabb had led the Eagles to a go-ahead drive with 3 minutes left. You can tell this is old footage because this is when Jeff Fisher was still a highly respected NFL coach as opposed to the 7-9 meme that he ended up becoming. Game number 14 saw the defending champion Baltimore Ravens defeat the Stafford-led Detroit Lions 18-16 on Monday Night Football. The Ravens, led by Justin Tucker back when he was still good, made 6 field goals, including a 61-yard go-ahead field goal with 38 seconds left after Stafford threw a go-ahead touchdown. But Stafford in this game also threw 3 interceptions, which ended up being the death knell for the Lions on this particular day. People forget about this game, though, because neither team ended up making the playoffs that season. What the hell was that? Game 15, December 12th, 1983, between the Green Bay Packers, who beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 12-9. There is not a lot of footage of this game, as you might know. I can only find this touchdown, which makes it all the more unlikely that the Packers won this game because they didn't score any touchdowns, they kicked 4 field goals, they threw 3 interceptions, and had 4 turnovers in general, and yet they still found a way to win in overtime. You want to talk about a forgotten team that was exciting and wacky? Go look up the 1983 Packers, folks. Lynn Dickey was a lot like Jameis Winston, only without the sexual assault allegations. Game number 16, we go to January 2nd, 2005. This was Larry Fitzgerald's rookie season, and the Arizona Cardinals squeaked out a win against a bad Buccaneers team, 12-7. Cardinals kicked 4 field goals, 2 in a row each, sandwiched in between a 75-yard touchdown pass by Chris Sims to Michael Clayton, one of the greatest one-year wonders in NFL history. Oh yeah, Emmitt Smith. This was also Emmitt Smith's last career game, one of the greatest system running backs of all time. But the biggest reason the Cardinals were able to win this game in a meaningless game where neither team made the playoffs and both had terrible records was because the Buccaneers committed 4 turnovers and the Cardinals only committed 1. Again, those turnovers will get you. And finally, to complete the perfect regular season, Game 17, January 8th, 2023, the Miami Dolphins took down the Joe Flacco-led New York Jets 11-6 in a game that featured no touchdowns from either side and a safety on the very last play of the game by the Dolphins. But really, the game-winning play was a 50-yard field goal by Jason Sanders to give the Dolphins a 9-6 lead. Dan Marino was happy as well. There were also no turnovers in this game. Neither team even threw for 160 yards. It was just a completely boring and forgettable game. But it did get the Dolphins into the playoffs, where the very next week they lost to the Buffalo Bills on the road. Shocking. After going 17-0, we got a first-round bye, and we get to the divisional round. And this divisional round game took place on January 15th, 2017, the infamous game where the Steelers kicked 6 field goals and still beat the Chiefs 18-16. This was during the Alex Smith era, and this was also during an era where Chiefs fans who now have Mahomes pretend like the Chiefs were dog shit before Mahomes for like 30 years, when really they were just playoff chokers. As you can see by the highlights, the Steelers did not score any touchdowns, as you might have heard. The Steelers also took a 15-10 lead into the fourth quarter and an 18-10 lead early in the fourth before the Chiefs scored a touchdown to make it a 2-point game with just under 3 minutes left. They went for 2, they scored on it, but it was a flag, and then they went for 2 again, and it was incomplete, and the Steelers got the ball back and ran the clock out to defeat the Chiefs. This was just a long line of embarrassing playoff defeats for Andy Reid. At that point in time, it's amazing how much the narrative is switched up on Andy Reid because of Mahomes, because of anti-Mahomes people. But either way, in the long run, the Chiefs won because this was the game that convinced them to draft Mahomes, while the Steelers went on to get their ass kicked by the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, and since then, the Steelers have not won another playoff game. But this imaginary team at 18-0 advances to the conference championship game. And what conference championship game did they play in? The one that took place on January 20th, 1991, between the New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers, where the Giants won 15-13 to famously stop the 49ers three-peat. This was also the game where Joe Montana famously got his shit wrecked fact. But that wasn't the reason why the 49ers lost, despite what all the narratives in the media will tell you. The reason the 49ers lost is because with a 13-12 lead late in the game, Roger Craig fumbled the ball away to Lawrence Taylor, who's such a class act, and then as time expired, Matt Barr kicked his 5th field goal of the game to send the Giants to Super Bowl 25. When you look at the scoring, you realize that there were 7 field goals and 1 long touchdown pass by Joe Montana to John Taylor, not Jerry Rice, mixed in. But now this imaginary team that's played 19 games and gone 19-0 is now going to the Super Bowl, which leads back to the main question of this video, which is, can an NFL team go undefeated without ever scoring a touchdown? And the answer is, drumroll please, no. Unfortunately, in the history of the Super Bowl, as there have been 58 of them, there have only been 3 times where a team failed to score a touchdown, and all 3 times the team that failed to score a touchdown did not win. In fact, the most recent 2 examples both benefited Tom Brady's team. Like, isn't that just so weird? Tom Brady's just, who would have ever guessed that? Anyway, the first example happened back in 1971 in Super Bowl VI, where the Dallas Cowboys beat the Miami Dolphins 24-3, but it wasn't until 2018 where we all remember the famous Super Bowl 53 where the Patriots and the Rams met up and the Patriots won a sleeper 13-3, where Tom Brady willed his defense to hold the number 2 offense in the league to just 3 points, while he won his second Super Bowl scoring 13 points or fewer offensively. The only quarterback to even do that once. He's done that twice, and he did it against the same team. And finally, the third and most recent example of a team failing to score any touchdowns in the Super Bowl was the Kansas City Chiefs in 2020, with the decimated offensive line and Mahomes nursing injuries, and really everything just went about as poorly as possible. Tom Brady, average completion, 3.4 yards in the air, just a disgusting night. The Chiefs got destroyed. So again, the answer is no. You cannot have an undefeated season in the NFL without scoring a touchdown. At some point, whether offensively or defensively, you're going to have to cross that goal line if you want to raise the Lombardi Trophy. Well, folks, it's stat time, where I kind of sum up all the stats from all these games and put them together, and it usually creates some interesting shit, at least in my opinion. So let's take a look at the stats, right? Okay, so here's all the games together as if it was a regular schedule. You see all the wins, you see all the low-scoring games, you can see 0 touchdowns, 0 extra points attempted, made, all the field goals, couple of safeties, and then you look at the opponents, you got sometimes touchdowns, not a lot of extra points, not a lot of field goals, some safeties. Same thing for the postseason in the 2 games that they won before you get to the Super Bowl, where there were no winners, unfortunately. Now we get to what I thought was the most interesting stats I looked at, which are the passing numbers for all the teams. In the regular season, the team that went 17-0 had a combined 0 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, with a 59.1 passer rating and a 3.81 adjusted net yards per attempt, with 20 turnovers, which isn't that terrible of an amount and is also a key number once you compare it to their opponents. Their opponents, through 14 touchdowns and 24 interceptions, had a better passer rating, although both the passer rating and adjusted net yards per attempt are still bad. But the key number here, 40 turnovers compared to 20. So literally their opponents were turning the ball over twice as often, which is why these teams were able to win these games despite not scoring any touchdowns and having to settle for field goals. Then we get to the playoffs leading up to the Super Bowl. And in these 2 games, it's only 2-game sample size, but again, in these 2-game sample sizes, the opponents had more turnovers than the team that was going 19-0 heading into the Super Bowl that didn't score any touchdowns. And then finally, we do get to the Super Bowl, and yeah, in the 3 Super Bowls where the teams didn't score any touchdowns, their numbers were very, very bad compared to their opponents, where their passing numbers were very good. And in a shift of luck, you'll see this, the 6 turnovers compared to just 2 for their opponents. Again, the turnovers are the key stat in all these things. And again, eventually, you're going to have to score a touchdown at some point if you want to go undefeated, win the Super Bowl. Here's some other stats. In the regular season, the teams combined to go 93 for 98, 95% from the field on their field goals, while their opponents made just 15 of 25 of 60% percentage on their field goals for the season. So yes, the team that scored nothing but field goals and went 17-0 kicked 78 more field goals than their opponent. That'll do it. In the 2 playoff games leading up to the Super Bowl, it was more of the same, 11 of 12 for 92%. So in those 2 playoff games, 8 more field goals were kicked by the undefeated team. But then you get to the Super Bowl, and again, it's a different story. In these 3 Super Bowl appearances where the teams didn't score any points, their field goal percentage was worse, but they also only made 1 more kick compared to their opponents, while also not scoring any touchdowns, which is a big reason why they lost. If you can kick field goals and score touchdowns, guess what? You're more likely to win. So as of now, as of the production of this video, there has never been a team that has won a Super Bowl scoring only field goals, but there's always a chance that that can change. I hope you enjoyed this video, stay safe, and remember to subscribe.